Dear students of class 12th, hope that you are all fine. आप जानते हैं कि हम एक लेसन पढ़ रहे हैं जिसका नाम है द रैट रैप। कुछ पेजेस हमने पढ़े। आज हम स्टार्ट करेंगे पेज 35 से और इसका जो पैरा है दैट इज़ पैरा थर्ड. So we are starting from para third, page 35 of the text Flamingo. Now let us start. During one of the long dark evenings just before Christmas, the master smith and his helper sat in the dark porch near the furnace waiting for the crude iron which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Every now and then one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments, dripping with perspiration, though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. इस पैरा में कुछ वर्ड्स हैं, एक दो वर्ड्स जिनका माने मैं यहाँ समझता हूँ कि आपको बता दूँ. Anvil means a heavy iron block with a flat top and concave sides. Anvil means a heavy iron block with a flat top and concave sides. Perspiration means sweat. Here students, writer says that on one long dark evening near Christmas time, the master smith and his helper were sitting in the dark forge which was built near the furnace. He was wearing a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. Both of them were waiting for the pig iron which was put inside the furnace fire to be ready to put onto the anvil. As I told you that anvil is a heavy block with flat top which is used to shape the metals. Anvil is a heavy block with flat top which is used to shape the metal. So they took turns to stir the liquid which was very hot. As they could bear the heat for few moments, each of them would return sweating profusely. Right? Now next para. All the time there were many sounds to be heard. All the time there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned and the burning coal cracked. The fire boy shoveled charcoal into the row of the furnace with a great deal of clatter. Outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick-tiled roof. In this para there are some difficult words. First word जो है that is billows. Billows means airbag that emits a stream of air used for blowing air into a fire. Right? Billows means billows means airbag that emits a stream of air used for blowing air into a fire. Shoveled means move. Shoveled means move. It is shoveled. Shoveled means move. Ma, M-A-W, ma means jazz. Clatter means bang. Whipped means beaten with a whip. Here to hit something. Here it means to hit something. So in this para, Rat says that one could hear different types of sounds in the forge. There was a big billow which was blowing air in the fire with great sound. Also there was the sound of cracking. Also there was the sound of cracking coal. There was the sound of cracking coal. One could also hear the bang of the charcoal which was being moved by the fireboy. The sounds which were coming from outside the mill, there were these were of the waterfall, the high speed north wind which hit the raindrops against the brick tiled roof. Now next line is it was probably it was probably on account of all this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close up to the furnace. So here it says that it was due to these different types of sounds. It happened due to these different types of sounds that the blacksmith did not realize that a man had opened the gate of the forge and had entered till he came and stood near the furnace. Now, last para of this page, surely it was nothing, it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes and to come in to warm themselves in front of the fire. The blacksmiths glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. He looked the way people of this type usually did, with a long beard, dirty, ragged, and with a bunch of rattraps dangling on his chest. In this paragraph, there is a word sooty pans. Sooty pans means window pans covered in soot. Covered in soot. Window pans covered in soot. Here means black black powder produced when coal, wood, etc. is burned. Rat says in these lines that many homeless people used to be attracted to the lights of the forge. Many homeless people used to get attracted to the lights of the forge, which peeked through the window panes, which were covered with the black powder, of burnt coal. Right? They would seek shelter there. They would warm themselves with the help of the burning fire, as the blacksmiths were accustomed to visitors. They were indifferent to the man. They just looked at him. The Rattrap seller's appearance was similar to that of the vendors. He had a long beard, right? This Rattrap had a long beard. He was dirty. He was worn. He had worn old out clothes and had a bunch of rattraps hanging from his chest. Now he asked permission to stay, and the master blacksmith nodded a haughty consent without honoring him with a single word. He asked permission to stay, and the master blacksmith nodded a haughty consent with honoring him with a single word. Haughty means arrogant. Haughty means arrogant. The peddler tried, this Rattrap tried to seek permission from the blacksmith so that he could stay in the forge for a night. He allowed the peddler with an arrogant consent by just nodding and did not say a single word to him. Just by nodding. सिर्फ सर को हिलाया. हाँ. It means yes. Now now the next lines from the text, that is the tramp. The tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk, but only to warm himself and sleep. In those days, the Ramsju iron mills was owned by a very prominent iron master whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible, and at this very moment he came into the forge on one of its one of his nightly rounds of inspection. Here is a word that is prominent. Prominent means important. Tramp. Tramp means vagabond, wanderer. Here it says in these lines that the peddler also said nothing because his main aim was to warm himself and to sleep. The owner of the Ramsju iron mill in those days was a very ambitious person whose aim was to sell only the finest iron into the market. Therefore, he used to keep a check on the workers both during the night and the day. The owner was on a night inspection visit when the peddler entered the forge. Now, lines from the text. Naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall. Naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin who had eased his way so close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. The ironmaster did not follow the example of the blacksmith, who had hardly decided to look at the stranger. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, and then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. Here are some words. Ragamuffin means a person in rags. Ragamuffin means a person in rags. Dignity. Dignity means to do something that one considers to be beneath one's dignity. Do something that one considers to be beneath one's dignity. Slouch hat means hat bent on one side of the head. Here, a writer says that unlike the blacksmith, the ironmaster at once notes it. Unlike the blacksmith, the ironmaster at once notes the peddler, who was sitting so close to the furnace that the steam was coming out of his torn clothes. He not only went near him but also removed the wanderer's hat that was bent to one side so that he could see the man's face clearly. But of course, it is you, Niels Olof, he said. How you do look. But of course it is you, Niels Olof, he said. How you do look. The man with the rat traps had never before seen the ironmaster at Ramsju and did not even know what his name was. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once. His word acquaintance means associate. Undeceive means to tell someone that his belief is mistaken. That says that when the ironmaster took off the peddler's hat, he mistook him as an old acquaintance. He mistook him as an old acquaintance, Niels Olof. Niels Olof. He was Niels Olof. The peddler did not know him nor had seen this man before, but he thought that if this man mistook him as his old companion and gave him some money out of pity, then it would be a good thing. Therefore, he did not let him know that he had mistaken him as Niels Olof. Yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me, he said. This peddler says that, yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me, he said. You should not have resigned from the regiment, said the ironmaster. That was the mistake. If only I had still been in the service at the time, it never would have happened. Well, now of course you will come home with me. Downhill means worst. Regiment means unit in the army or defense force. Here, this paddler says that. So Paddler here started a conversation with the Iron Master by saying that the things did not went well with him. To this, the Iron Master replied that he had made a big mistake by leaving the regiment. He also added that if he would have been working in the regiment when he resigned, he would have let him to do so later. He would not have he would not he would not have let him to do so. Let on he invited him to his home. No. Now there are another these are the new lines which we are going to start. So to go along to the manor house and be received by the owner like an old regimental comrade, that however did not please the tramp. No, I could not think of it, he said, looking quite alarmed. He thought of the 30 corner. He thought actually to get money from this iron man, iron master. He thought of the 30 kroner to go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away as unconspicuously as possible. Here are some words. Words are in this para words are manor house, M-A-N-O-R, manor house, a large country house, right? Comrade means a fellow soldier. Alarmed means frightened. Inconspicuously means invisible or which is not noticeable. In these lines, writer says that the rat trapper did not find it to be a good idea to visit the ironmaster's place. He was frightened with the idea of visiting to the large house of an old soldier, which according to him was not safe. After all, he had stolen money with him. He did not want to put himself in danger. His intention were to sleep in the forge and then go away from there without even being noticed. Right? The rat trapper seller did not find it to be a good idea to visit the ironmaster's place. So what he did, he was frightened with the idea of visiting to the large house of the old soldier, which according to him was not safe. After all, he had the stolen money with him. He did not want to put himself in danger. His intention was to sleep in the forge and then go away there from there without even being noticed. Now, the Iron Master assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. Please do not think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there, he said. Elizabeth is dead, as you may already have heard. My boys are abroad, and there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We were just saying that it was too bad. We did not have any company. We did not have any company or Christmas. Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. Just to see these lines, writer says that the ironmaster was aware of his friend's miserable condition, so he tried to make him comfortable by saying that he should feel free to come his home, as his home was an ordinary one. He told him that his wife was no more, and added that he must be aware of this. Then he let him know that both his sons were settled abroad, only he and his daughter were left at home. He invited him to celebrate Christmas with his family, so that he and his daughter may have some good company at the Christmas feast. But the stranger said no. But the stranger said no, and again no, and the ironmaster saw that he must give in. It looks as though Captain it looks as though Captain Van Stahel prepared to stay with you tonight. Sit Jens Trom, he said to the master blacksmith and turned on his heel. Herat says that though the ironmaster made many attempts to invite him, the peddler did not accept his invitation. So at last he says to the blacksmith, "Sit, Journeys Trom, that it seemed at that Captain Van Stahel peddler wanted to stay with him in forge. But he laughed to himself as he this is text. But he laughed to himself as he went his away, and the blacksmith, who knew him, understood very well that he did not said his last word. But he laughed to himself as he went away, and the blacksmith, who knew him, understood very well that he had not said his last word. Here it says that then he laughed and went away, but the blacksmith knew that he was hiding something. It was not more than half an hour. It was not it was not more than half an hour before they heard the sound of the carriage wheels outside the forge, and a new guest came in. But this time it was not the ironmaster. He had sent his daughter, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than he himself. After a gap of a half an hour, it says after a gap of a half an hour, the ironmaster sent his daughter. He hoped that this daughter may bring his friend home, as he believed that she was better in persuading others. Now, the text is she entered, followed by a valet. She entered, followed by a valet, carrying on his arm a big fur coat. She was not all she was not at all pretty. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest and quite shy. In the forge everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. The master blacksmith and his apprentice still sat on their bench, and the iron and the charcoal still glowed in the furnace. The stranger had stretched The stranger had stretched himself out on the floor, and lay with a piece of pig iron under his head and his hat pulled down over his eyes. As soon as the young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. The man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open. He jumped up abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. Here is a word that is valet. Valet means personal attendant. Personal attendant. Valet. Modest means humble. Apprentice means learner. Here it says that the iron master, the iron master's daughter entered the mill. The iron master's daughter entered the mill with her attendant who was carrying a big fur coat. She was a humble girl who was very shy. When she entered, everyone was busy the same way as they had been earlier. The blacksmith was still sitting on the bench with his trainees and was working on the iron. She went up to the peddler and lifted his hat. The peddler slept with one eye open, and as soon as he saw her he got shocked and jumped up. So thank you very much. आज इतना ही। आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।